cooling stations will be located right here at the Greater St. Mary Missionary Baptist Community Church and the Pleasant Hill Baptist Church. And they're going to significantly help the community by offering reliable internet access during emergencies when power is disrupted. In addition to these 2 designated cooling centers, we're also unveiling 3 additional community Wi-Fi hotspot sites for access post-natural disaster. You may be asking yourself, well, what is exactly a cooling center? What exactly is a Wi-Fi hotspot? The way this began is AARP provided community challenge grants to the Greater St. Mary Missionary Baptist Church and Pleasant Hill Baptist Church to install generators that will serve as cooling stations as well as power station hubs in the immediate aftermath of a natural disaster when power is out. We also provided micro grants to 3 additional churches in the 70601 zip code that will provide solar-powered Starlink Wi-Fi satellites that will provide free Wi-Fi, and we also provided additionally portable charging stations as well as laptops and other devices that can be used to connect to family, connect to additional resources like FEMA and those kinds of things that will help to speed up the recovery and to help folks get back on their feet after a natural disaster. All 5 of these facilities will play a crucial role as second responders, providing vital services during natural disasters and power outages. I'd like to now hand it over real briefly to Alfred Mason, our volunteer state president, to explain a little bit more about how this was possible and what it will mean for this community. So thank you again for coming out today. Alfred Mason.
Again, good morning to everyone. It is indeed a pleasure to have been asked to come. We have experienced similar disasters. My wife and I are originally from New Orleans. Katrina moved us to the Baton Rouge area. So we fully understand exactly what is taking place here this morning and appreciate what's being done. This, as Andrew stated, was being handled through AARP Community Challenge Grant. And it is designed to help communities like disasters that we had here in this community. Unfortunately, almost 20 years ago, there wasn't too very much they could have done in New Orleans because we had, I believe, my wife and I had somewhere between 6 and 8 feet of water that stayed somewhere around 2 to 4 weeks. We left in August, we got back in October. So you guys are coming along extremely well. This isn't about us, this is about you and your community challenge grant and what it has done. It is a commitment that AARP has made to help communities, especially the 50-plus community. But everyone is benefiting from this. You cannot go on FEMA the way we went to FEMA. You now have to go through Wi-Fi. If you've lost power, you've lost your laptop, probably not your phone because we always keep them, but you've lost that. How can you possibly communicate with FEMA without the ability to connect to Wi-Fi? When we walked in this building this morning, this church, the pastor said, "It's cool. You were being polite." This is definitely going to be what it is called, a cooling center. And if any of you don't feel what I felt, and I'm wearing a coat and long sleeves, but it's cool. And that's the purpose. That's the intent. That's why we're here this morning, to help launch this program. We thank all of you for coming out. We appreciate your attendance. I hope you indeed appreciate what has been done. We thank the pastor of this church and his congregation, because somehow, somewhere, church has gotten lost in the midst of things. This is where we used to come to get almost everything we need. And now all of a sudden, this isn't needed anymore. Well, whoever who has that thought in their mind, I feel sorry for. Because if you don't have a ground to stand on, this is it. If you don't have a voice to speak from, this is it. The church is still the center of the community. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask Reverend Torbert if he at this time would come and make your presentations. And again, thank you for your being a part of this.
Thank you very much. And thank all of you for being here. I want to share with you some historical reflections on how we got to this point today as it relates to some of our local churches being involved. I am president of National Baptist Convention of America, and I was really disturbed by broadband and its access, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic. So I contacted a friend in Washington, D.C., and said, if I wrote an op-ed, which I have not done before, but I figured out how to do it, could you get it to the right news outlets? And he said to me, yes. And so it was published December 24, 2021, in the Baton Rouge Advocate, but in other news outlets across the state. And I'll just read a couple of statements from the op-ed that I was able to write. The COVID-19 pandemic has exposed an opportunity gap that has been growing for decades. Since the advent of widespread internet access, far too many people have been left behind due to digital inequities that are crippling urban, rural, and low-income communities. And this digital divide persists in Louisiana. According to data from Broadband Now, approximately 404,000 people are without access to a reliable connect capable of sufficient speeds. And while there are 126 internet providers offering services in Louisiana, more than 260,000 people do not have access to any wired providers in their homes. And another 439,000 people only have one internet provider available, limiting their services and plan choices. And after writing that, and it got published the day before Christmas, which was perfect, Mr. Vineet Edgar, I can never say his last name, I call him Vineet and leave it at that, who's over Connect Louisiana. He's the executive director working to get access for broadband in the state of Louisiana through some federal grants and other options. He contacted me after he read it because it was like I was saying to him he wasn't doing his job. And I didn't even know he existed. But the op-ed brought him out of the grasses. And since then, he has been working hard along with us and others, and that's how I got introduced to AARP, knowing that they were in this space also. And so AARP talked to us. We had a meeting with Vineet in Baton Rouge in his office with several AARP representatives. I don't know why I can't say it because I have a membership. But I want to ask some of the pastors who are involved with us here in Lake Charles that are present, the Reverend Dr. Kyron Coleman of Pleasant Hill Baptist Church. Will you stand? And that is my pastor, all right? I had to get my own pastor on board. We have Pastor Cuba from the Saints Cathedral Church of God in Christ, who's here with us. And Pastor Elmo Ghana in the back there from the Mount Calvary Baptist Church. There are a couple other churches that are involved, but those are the ones that are present today and are represented. I wanted to acknowledge them for their coming to meetings and participating so that we could get to this point. And so I've discussed some of the challenges of broadband in our area, but now we see some of the solutions coming forward. And we want to thank AARP and give them a big hand for the grant because they have provided some equipment that we need. There's now a generator that's on this building. There's a generator on Pleasant Hill Baptist Church that they purchased and had installed, so if the utilities go out, the electricity go out, you will still have this cool air in this building, and it will be a true cooling station. So when I came in here this morning, I thought to go back and change the thermostat so it would get a little warmer and wouldn't be so cold, but I decided to demonstrate what a real cooling station. So I left it alone, so now it's a colder station. And so hopefully Reverend Coleman will get his down to this temperature if needed. But I want to thank these pastors and thank AARP for this partnership so that we can help people in our community. That's what the church is here for. We're here to help people in our community, and we want to be proactive and not just be reactive. Wait till a hurricane strike, the utilities is out, and then we try to figure out how to fix it. This way, we are proactive, and our partners are going to help us to get the word out whenever there is a power outage for an extended period, in particular in the aftermath of hurricanes and tornadoes. And you know, this season is predicted to be pretty active. There's something, I think, out in the Gulf now. I hope we don't need this cooling station, but if we do need it, Mayor, it's going to be available. So at this time, I'd like to turn the mic over to our mayor, Mayor Nick Hunter, who will come and have some words at this time. Mayor Hunter.
Thank you, Pastor. Appreciate that. Good morning, everybody. And I do want to, again, acknowledge a couple of my colleagues that are here. Councilman Craig Marks, Councilman Ronnie Harvey, Marshal Nate Keller is here. All elected officials, and I know these gentlemen care about what is happening today. I believe that government has a role to play in the topics that we're discussing today in the aftermath of natural disasters, taking care of our community. I also love, Alfred, what you said a moment ago about how the church means so much to a community. And sometimes, my personal opinion, sometimes I think we immediately look to government to solve a problem when the church could be an even more impactful way to solve a problem. And so I appreciate those comments, and that's why I love this partnership today. Because the greatest partnerships, the greatest accomplishments, I believe, are when you get multiple people around a table working together. Government can't do it all alone. The church, the faith community can't do it all alone. Nonprofits can't do it all alone. If we're working in silos, we're accomplishing much less than if we're working together. And this partnership that I see here today, I see the faith community, I see residents from the community, I see a nonprofit and AARP coming together, and I think those are the partnerships where we really see the most transformational, real impacts. So I'm here today really to say thank you. Thank you to all of the partners who made this happen. The City of Lake Charles is honored to host this initiative here within our city limits, and anything we can do to help, we are there. But again, this is from the community, by the community, and I think that's the most beautiful partnership we can have. So God bless you all. Thank you. Thank you, Pastor.
As I was preparing to evacuate for Hurricane Laura with my family and others, I called Councilman Craig Marks, who's also a member of our church, to find out what he was going to be doing. I didn't know if he was staying behind because of government responsibilities. I know when I was on the council, somebody else had the government responsibilities doing evacuation because I was gone. But anyway. And he shared that he was going to stay marshal and he was going to stay in his house. And I said to him then, Coach Harvey, you do not need to stay in your house. Our church is probably a pretty solid place. It was another location. We're here temporarily. And I told him where to go on the second floor and what wall to get behind, because I had always thought about if I ever got trapped in Lake Charles, where I would go with my family in the church. And so he stayed, he and two others, another member of the church and another gentleman, in the church during Laurel. So we're going to have him to come, Councilman Craig Marks, to tell you his story of staying. And he's still here.
Good morning. The first thing that jumps out at me is that I used to think AARP was an old people organization. And now I get it in the mail and I'm a member of AARP. So I'm thankful for AARP because, as Pastor Talbot said, until you've gone through one of these situations, you don't know how it's going to impact you. You know, and it was, shoot, I'm 56 now. It was at 52 or 53 that this happened. And you're never experiencing it, so you don't know what you need to do and how you need to do it. I just wanted to stay because I said if my house got damaged, I wanted to be the first one to see it. You know, that was my mindset, because when you work hard for certain things, if you're going to lose it in a day, you want to be the first one there to mourn. So I ended up staying, and Pastor called, and I said, Pastor, I'm going to stay in my house. I'll be all right. He hung up the phone. He waited a little while. He called me back again. He said, no, Brother Marks, you need to go to the church, like that. So I finally conceded, but it was, at the time, it was 5 of us staying. And one of them was a sheriff that had to, decided to stay with me as well. But as the night went on, they got called in to work. So it got dwindled down to just 2 of us. So at that point, I was getting kind of scared. So I took pastor's advice and I went to 2nd Avenue, where our church location was at the time. And that's a historical building, and it's real sturdy. And long story short, we went in there. I got where pastor told us to go. And the night seemed like it was going to be pretty good. Then all of a sudden, you couldn't catch nothing on your phone. There was nothing. So now we detached from everybody else. And then it's starting to get darker and darker, and that whistle sound. If you ever been in one of those things, you hear that whistle sound take place, you know something about to happen. So we got between the stage and the back area. Well, just before, they had another guy in church with me, and I lost sight of him. So when I went to get him, he was about from me to that wall, and we was walking toward each other. Then all of a sudden, the windows start popping out in between us. And so now that really brought the reality that something going on, but still no communication. We in there by ourselves, and all through the night, you can hear the whistling. You can hear everything taking place, and you look outside, you can't see nothing because it's black. And then that big old building started rocking. You can feel it. And so we got in that corner, and I put my head in my pillow, and I went to sleep, because I didn't want to feel it. But coming out the next day, when you walk outside and the sun is shining and everything, and you walking around, and I live maybe 3 blocks from 2nd Avenue, and it took me 2 hours to get to my house because you couldn't drive, and you had to cross trees and telephone poles. And the reality struck that you can't communicate with nobody. My family had left. You can't call them. You couldn't get on your cell phone. Nothing was happening. And for us in Lake Charles, this stayed for a while, and then you start to understand that the world keeps going. You may be going through something, but they still out there. If you make it to Houston, you realize it's hustling and bustling, but we can't communicate. We can't reach out like we would normally do or get to family members. So this resource that's coming here to Lake Charles, it's a godsend. Because we know what we've been through before. We knew what we had to do, in those times past. Now we're making preparations, and we got the help to make preparations so that the people in these areas won't suffer like we suffered the first time. We can't stop the weather from happening, but we can be better prepared than what we were before. So AARP, I appreciate what you're doing in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Member. Well, that concludes our press conference. I want to thank everyone again for being here. I want to thank. We at the back table we have a resource table. We also have magnets and flyers for the individual churches, so they can take those with them back to their congregation, so that when a storm happens, and this this question may be asked by the media, but when a storm happens post natural disaster, post storm, the day after, 2 days after, you may be wondering when the cooling center is open. Well, the churches will work with the media to make that information available. They'll work with the radio stations, television stations, and get that information, either identified on their broadcasts or other means. So then you'll know that the station is open. But we have magnets that you can also put on your refrigerator that have the addresses and the phone numbers for each of the churches that will serve as Wi-Fi hotspots, as well as the churches that will serve as the cooling stations. So you can also call if you have access to a phone. I know that might be a challenge, but if you have access, you can always call to see if they're available. But also be looking to your local stations, radio, television, for that information. That's the role of a second responder, and so that information will be made available. But yeah, we have a box for each of the 5 churches to take those magnets and flyers back to their community. We also have fans, so if you want a hand fan, we've got those as well. So please take all of the resources that we have back at the back table. And now we have time for a couple questions from, I know KPLC is here. If there's any other media, we do have time for a couple questions. And Lake Charles American Press is here as well.
Will you limit the folks who can use the station? Do they have to be a certain race, a certain denomination, from this community within certain miles?
No, there won't be any limit. I mean, I defer to the churches themselves, but I mean, I think it'll be based on capacity. I think, each church has varying capacity within their own facility. So, Reverend Tolbert, maybe you can speak to the actual numbers, but most churches are probably somewhere between 50 and 75 individuals per church.
So most definitely, we will not limit it based on race, but of course, there will be a limit on the capacity of buildings. For example, Mount Calvary Baptist Church may can seat a house 100, 125, and maybe 75 here. So we'll go by capacity. Kind of like the food bank our church runs now. Everybody can go there. And on Sundays, when we open the door, everybody can come to church who want to come to church. So if any of you are looking for a church, I just threw in a plug. Huh?
Thank you for the question. We have time for a couple more questions.
Can you explain, to me it's baffling because
Sure.
when I was here, everything was shut off. What's going to prevent that from happening in this situation? What is it about this situation that will keep us going through the storm?
So Greater St. Mary's and Pleasant Hill Baptist Church will have generators that are run by gas. So they have their own gas line. So when power is knocked out, gas line, the gas-powered generators will provide the air conditioning and the power so that folks can come in and cool off and also power their devices if they need to. We'll have powering stations set up. One of the things that the AARP grant provided was devices, laptops, iPads that are free to use. You can also charge your phone if you've got your device with you. You can charge that. That way, then you can get on the FEMA website and be able to utilize, be able to get, apply for resources and services and those kinds of things. So that will be the situation at Pleasant Hill and Greater St. Mary's, and then the other three churches will have what we're calling Wi-Fi hotspots. So they'll have a solar-powered Starlink satellite, which is installed into the ground. It's very easy to set up, and so it's run by. So if there's no power, obviously, the power source would be solar power. So then it would be able to power charging stations. So again, folks could use that to charge their phones, iPads, laptops, that kind of thing. But then also use it to get Wi-Fi. So the Wi-Fi would then, work out from that satellite. I can't remember the exact range, but it's a pretty good range that the satellite will be able to spread out. So that's the difference maker, I believe.
Total grant.
The total grant, the micro grants were, I think, $4,000 to $5,000 per church, and then I want to say the actual community challenge grant was about $25,000, and that provided generators for both of the churches. It's like $25,000 to $30,000, I think, and that also included other, funding for more devices and that kind of thing. Say that one more time. Well, that was, Reverend Tolbert mentioned it at the outset, that we met with the governor's office, Connect to Louisiana. The 5 churches came together. We had a couple broadband experts, but the churches, they were able to represent the residents themselves and express the need that they had heard from the residents. We had done a survey, for lack of a better word, that the churches were able to compile information from their congregation that really served as the feedback that we needed to determine what the next steps were to do and what the solutions might be. And that meeting happened in June of 2022. So, it's taken, a little bit of time to get everything together, but we wanted to be very deliberate in that process and make sure that we were accounting for everybody's input. So I've got time for one more question. Okay, so these are powered by natural gas. So, okay, so there won't be, great question, because I think when, I'm speaking the most recent hurricane that we've dealt with, Hurricane Ida, we ran into the same situations. If you have generators powered by gasoline or any, portable generators, those kinds of things, and the gas stations are closed or out of service, then you're out of luck. But these two generators will be powered by natural gas, yeah. And I believe that's all the time we have for one more question.
Will the churches give us information as to what hours they will be open? Will it come through KPLC and the local food services?
Yes, they will provide, and I think a lot of that will be determined by the church itself. They'll be able to determine what, staff capacity they have for hours and time open, what volunteer resources they have. I'm making an assumption, but I think it'll depend on the actual church and what their staffing and volunteer capacity is to make sure that their doors are open. Yeah, I think we're good.